We are talking Antrum, the deadliest film ever made. And this one is directed by David Amamito and Michael Lancey. And I probably butchered those names, apologies. And I would say this is one of the most interesting movies of the year and offers something quite unique. I'd even go as far as to say this movie is less of a film and more of a experience where you have to kind of buy into the premise as a whole, because it doesn't just offer you a film. So let me explain. So this is kind of a like a faux missing film. So basically what they're saying is that they have recovered this long lost 70s movie that was meant to be cursed. Now at the beginning of the film and at the end there's basically some kind of documentary style kind of footage with various kind of interviews essentially saying that anyone who watches this movie then dies at some kind of like near a point just after they've watched it. A little bit like the kind of The Ring, I suppose. And this movie has never been seen outside of a few kind of screenings for critics and stuff like that. And whenever it has been screened, everyone has kind of died. It even has a legal disclaimer before you actually watch the movie saying like you're watching it at your own risk. And then we kind of go into the actual kind of film itself, which is essentially made to be in the kind of the style of a kind of lost 70s movie. And I've got to say, they do a great job of really kind of having an authentic feeling 70s movie in regards to its look, the kind of the pacing. We'll come on to it again. And then again, it's kind of like tailed off with a little bit of kind of documentary footage at the end. Throughout the actual kind of story portion of the movie, it's actually interspersed with subliminal images and things like this to kind of give you that kind of freaky feeling really. There's kind of like satanic kind of like sigils kind of like that will just kind of flash up. There's a few kind of images and things like that as well. So you know, if you were to buy into this as a kind of an experience, like I said, like you know, you are watching this forbidden fruit, and if you do choose to watch this movie, you are risking your life, as I just have. So we'll see what happens. If the channel suddenly disappears, then maybe not watch this movie. So I've got to say, having that kind of that intro, and I've seen it done similar. I reviewed a movie called Momo earlier on in the year, and that was a similar sort of thing. It was a lost film, but I've got to say this one does it so much better because it feels more authentic, even though the film, you know, is a newly shot film. Apparently, maybe it really is a lost film. But anyway, it does feel like legitimate. And the way it's presented, you're kind of thinking, you know, oh, I'm kind of risking my life watching this. Anyway, the actual plot of the story part of the film essentially focuses on two youngsters. You've got this young boy and his kind of slightly older sister, and they are. Well, the little boy's upset because his dog had to be put down after it attacked him, and the sister takes him up to this kind of like this remote woodland area where there are kind of almost like pet cemetery where you can kind of. She's trying to find kind of evidence that the dog hasn't gone to hell because it obviously was put down for attacking him. And kind of they kind of do this kind of like incantation, and it just so happens that there is evidence of real satanic worship there, both in the form of corporeal kind of like weird kind of hillbilly hick Satanists, and maybe even something otherworldly there as well. And obviously things kind of go a little bit more than expected. And then throughout the movie, as I've said, it's interspersed between a variety of kind of like uncomfortable images and things like this. So what do we think of the movie? I've got to say, I felt this movie it stands upon its own in regards to its uniqueness, even though the actual plot of the film is relatively kind of straightforward, if that makes sense, and doesn't really kind of have a particularly strong narrative in regard to the actual story portion of this movie. When you watch this as an experience, I do feel it really does have a sense of uneasiness. Now, it's not the kind of, I wouldn't say it's kind of You know, it's not like, oh, I can't watch it because it's so disturbing. It's not necessarily disturbing, but it kind of has this. It does a good job of selling you on this product of you're watching this cursed movie, and it's kind of like forbidden. It's kind of like this forbidden fruit that you shouldn't be watching. And if you kind of like imagine yourself buying into this kind of thing, it does feel a little bit freaky, because the way this kind of like weird art, even with kind of like fantastic kind of like foreign credits and stuff like this, and the kind of like the muted colours and the kind of the grain and all that, does a really good job of selling you this kind of like obscure art house kind of horror movie that's kind of come out of nowhere with kind of like these big haired kind of like 70s kids and stuff. I thought it did a really good job of doing that, and I've got to say, even within the context of the story itself and the film, I thought the acting of these two kids was very good as well. So even if you were to snip off the kind of the documentary bits and just watch it as a film, you would still have some good performances from these kind of two child actors. The cast is relatively small. There's a few kind of smaller parts kind of scattered throughout the movie, but it's mainly kind of resting on these two kids, who I thought do a good job. And there are some legitimately kind of like creepy moments within the film when they've kind of like accentuated the film with kind of weird kind of audio effects and things like that. And again, if you're kind of using your imagination to some degree with this movie, which I feel it's a very rare thing, that's kind of, it really encourages you to use your own imagination and kind of to plus the film. And a lot of the time I feel you need to kind of like, with films, it's show don't tell. But I feel this is a rare occasion where the movie does show you some stuff, but it works so well because of the mythology that it's built up. It kind of adds to that hype when you're kind of filling in the blanks to yourself to a certain degree. But there are some scenes here that are particularly kind of uncomfortable to watch. There's a scene involving these kind of hillbilly Satanists that they are doing basically a procedure very similar to that of the Wicker Man, but more satanic is the best way. I don't want to spoil it for you. I feel it's maybe one of the more shocking scenes in the movie, but suffice to say, it's a Wicker Man-esque kind of style scene, but kind of with more satanic overtones. So, is there any kind of what can I say which is kind of maybe any negative of this movie? To be fair, I would say that my critiques are relatively minor. I will say this, I feel this is going to be a great film for maybe fans of like early 80s and 70s horror movies. However, if you are a younger audience member and you prefer the more kind of modern take on horror films, you may be put off by the kind of the slow pace of this movie. And the fact that the story, in actual fact, is fairly slight. There's not much happens in regards to plot development, character development, stuff like that. It's more, like I said, it's more of an experience. And I do think this is going to be a film where it is going to be a film that is really kind of enjoyed by certain audience members. But, you know, those members who want kind of like your Saw films and things like that are not going to be interested, because it's just not for them. But I do feel, I would say, if I had to have some more universal critiques, the kind of the way they intersperse this movie with the kind of like the interruptions in regards to the kind of subliminal images is a little bit, they've gone a little bit overboard with it. I feel they've done it a little bit too much. I feel it works when you have the odd kind of like flash here and there of different things. You know, the camera will pan over the sun, and as the sun is in the centre of the screen, there'll be a pentagram that appears, things like that. Once or twice, or maybe even just a few times, you know, within the movie. But it does it a little bit too much, to the point where it's just a little bit, yeah, okay, you know, a little bit hitting you over the head with it. And there's also just a few kind of like more kind of graphic images that are put in there as well. I think it just does it a little bit too much for its own good, and kind of almost takes you out of the experience to a certain degree. So I think it's a pretty decent movie. Like I said, the plot isn't anything special really, but I look at this as more of almost like an interactive experience, and when you kind of watch it as a whole, and you can kind of like buy into the kind of the idea that this kind of movie is this cursed movie, a bit like The Ring, and once you watch it, you were kind of like you're on a timer until you're gonna cark it. Then I feel it's kind of a fun thing. But like I've said, it's just pretty much a humdrum plot if you kind of take those elements out for it. But nonetheless, it's well acted and it's beautifully created. This kind of 70s style aesthetic, which I think is absolutely fantastic, and definitely going to be a watch for some people. I feel it's going to be a taste thing, and if you don't like this style of movie, I think you can maybe sort of appreciate that it's a decently made movie with a few kind of minor kind of issues in regards to, you know, a little bit of overuse of the kind of the subliminal stuff, the story being kind of quite slight, nothing really kind of is shocking in regards to you know, plot or character development, things like that. But overall, I'm going to give this one an 8 out of 10. I would actually recommend the majority of people who watch this channel may want to check this one out. I feel it's a very unique feeling movie, and if you like things like Wicker Man, Pet Sematary, The Ring, just maybe check it out. Or even if you're not into it, please do check it out, see what you think. But be warned, this is a cursed film. You may end up, who knows. Anyway, so I'm going to give this one an 8 out of 10. What did you think of it? Leave me a comment, and I shall look forward to seeing you next time.